When we talk about SERPs, though, it's really interesting to see how they can vary so much by not only your intent, but your device and the location you're in. So using like a Boston cream donut as an example, on the far left, we see if you were to search what is in a Boston cream donut, which is like a custard cream for all of you wondering now, you'll see that it's a traditional search result, but at the top, you get these quick answers. So this is pulling in the answer to your question without you having to actually click through to the link. So Wikipedia provides the answer for this. So it's just like right in the box there. So technically, if like that answered your question, you don't need to go anywhere else. And then right underneath that is people also ask. So it's like, hey, like you're wondering what's in a Boston cream donut. Were you wondering what that cream was made of? And continues your search and continues using Google. The second, if we were to just put in Boston cream, even though the first link is the exact same as the one on the left, both are the Wikipedia page for a Boston cream donut. This is more traditional because when you put in Boston cream, Google's like, okay, well, when we did it the first time, you wanted to know like what was in it, maybe ingredients. For this, are you looking to buy Boston cream? You're looking to know what's in a Boston cream? Do you want to know like if Boston creams are only in Boston? So they give you a much more generic result. In this third, we're throwing in Dunkin' Donuts Boston cream. So all of a sudden, we're not getting Boston cream specific information. We're getting more Dunkin' specific information. Dunkin' doesn't have a Boston cream donut page. They have a donuts page, but the Google has decided that's the most relevant. So they pull in that as the first result. And then much like in the first one, they also have people also ask, although the questions are slightly different. The number one being how many calories are in a Boston cream donut, followed by like, what is it? And so we see some of the similar questions. And then on the fourth, this is for Dunkin' near me, but very similarly could be for a Boston cream near me. Usually if you're like on your phone, but even if you were on a PC, if you were to type in Dunkin' near me, you're going to get a map pack, because Google assumes if you're looking for something near you, you are trying to go there. So they're trying to serve you that information to best suit your needs right away. So the takeaway from this is that it's important that depending on what you want the consumer to do and how you want to interact with them, you tailor your content for that. So like, let's pretend, and like Dunkin' wants to be here for all of them, but let's pretend that they didn't. And they were like, oh, like we don't have stores. So like, if people were looking for a Boston cream near them, it's like, oh, like we're not going to optimize any of our content for that. That doesn't make sense because we don't have a store for them to go to. If we're like more informational or more like a publisher, then we might want to focus more on like the quick answers showing up there, because if I see that, Dunkin' knows what's in a Boston cream donut, maybe they know a lot of other things. And then we get a little bit into the importance of being on page one. I'm not sure how all of you guys interact with Google, but in general, I don't go past page one on Google, because if I like type in a question or like something trying to get an answer, and it's not within the first 10 results, it doesn't answer my question, I don't assume that Google's doing a bad job. I assume I've done a bad job asking my question. So then I'll just like re-ask it. Sometimes I'll throw like Reddit in at the end, just trying to figure out like how to best get the answer I'm looking for. But from a purely like numbers perspective, if we looked at like this search result for an ice cream sundae, you'll see that the percent of people who click on like the first result versus like second, third, fourth decreases as it goes down. So like roughly 20% of people will click on the first result, then roughly 10% will click on the second result. So if we're looking at like just a single keyword, so like ice cream sundae, about 22,000 people search for that a month. So if you were in position 4 and you increased only one spot to position 3, you get an additional 1,500 people to your site. If you were in 3 and increased to 2, you would get an additional 2,000, and then 2 from 1, you would get an additional 4,000. And even if you figure like for every 1,000 people that come to your site, like one person buys an ice cream sundae, that's like $5 extra for every like additional 1,000 for every additional increase. And like I assume if you're like really looking for an ice cream sundae, then like it's less than 1 in 1,000 chance that like you're gonna buy it. So things like that, like it really does make a difference in terms of where you are ranking. And we'll get a little bit into later of like things that you can do to increase this. But kind of touching a little bit on each of the 3 things we're going to go on. The bottom of our pyramid is technical SEO. Truthfully, this isn't my favorite type of SEO, but it's real important because if your site doesn't work, then you can't make optimizations on your site. I prefer content, which is the second one. I'm more interested in that like integration with like copywriting and things like that. So we'll talk a little bit about like picking keywords and then optimizing your site and making content around those keywords. And then the like little top of your triangle is credibility. We're going to focus specifically on social and local integrations, but there's also things like backlinking and like partnerships that fall into this. Does anybody have any questions before we get into our first of 3 sections? Cool. So that's so much brighter. So going into some technical stuff, there's like 5 little like subcategories. We're only going to focus on 2. Some of them are like real technical and less interesting. So the first one is these things called sitemaps and robot txt files. So basically, a sitemap is something that you like hand to Google and you're like, this is everything on my website. And then the robots file is like, hey, when you send those spiders out, like don't look at these pages. So you can like make those and submit them to Google. We're not going to talk about that. The second one that we will talk about is cleaning up broken links. So that's things like redirect errors, 404s, things that like might go wrong with your site that you can fix to make your site better. The third is duplicate content. This is something if you have like 2 pages that basically say the exact same thing, Google thinks you're like stealing. I mean, granted, you're like stealing from yourself, but they think that like if there's duplicate content, then you're like stealing from other websites. So they're just like, oh, that seems fishy, and then they won't have that rank. We're not going to talk about that either. And we're also not going to talk about implementing schema markup, which is like it's like this code that you add to your site to basically like tell Google what's on your site. It's kind of like in high school when you had the Shakespeare textbooks, or at least my high school did, where they have like the actual Shakespeare on the side, and they're like, hey, like if you didn't understand that, like this is what this is. It's like, you know, it like helps Google like dumb it down. And then the 5th one is improving your page speed, which is like making your site load faster. So we'll also go over that, and we'll have a fun activity about that. It's like the most basic thing when it comes to your site. This is like real wordy, but basically, is your site secure? So that's the difference between HTTP and HTTPS. The S stands for security. So basically, HTTP is just the transfer of data between a browser and a web server, and then the S is the way that they do it, so it's secure. It's important, like much more now. It's also, you just have to like buy it and implement it. It's like not something like real fancy. It's just, you just gotta like pay more. But basically, it's like, hey, you're not going to get hacked, or like your chances of getting hacked are significantly less, which makes like the person going to your site feel a little bit more confident. Google also, if your site is not secure, will have a little warning that says like this site is not secure, and it like was aggressive in red. So like if I'm potentially going to make a purchase and they want my credit card information, but all of a sudden Google's like, are you sure you want to do that? All your information might be stolen. Like maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I would go to a competitor. And because of that, Google just prefers secure sites over non-secure sites. So it's really just it's just something we got to do so that like people feel safe. Like another S word. And then kind of getting into what we're talking about with broken links, there's like 2 main ways. They're called like status codes that like something can be wrong. And the first is redirects, which are like the 300 status codes, and that basically means that you were gonna go to a page and then instead we're gonna go to a different page. So this is something that you can do of like, let's say you like changed your URL, or like a page was broken, or like it's like so outdated you want to move somewhere else. You basically are like, oh, like you want us to go to page A, but actually you don't, so we're just going to go to page B instead. And like you as the person interacting with the website probably wouldn't even notice if like it's done right. But something to keep in mind is that they have these things called redirect chains. And these cute little examples on the left, it's basically like, hey, page A was going to page B, but then we decided page B was also pretty crap. So now we're going to page C. And in a perfect world, instead of having page A go to page B, go to page C, you just have like them both individually go to page C. And it doesn't seem like such a big deal when it's just like 2 or 3 in a row. But sometimes you have page A go to B to C to D, and it just like keeps going, and it slows down the speed of your site to the point that it's like, you know, like Google's going and they're like, just kidding, we're started loading this web page and you got to go down and try again and go down and try again. So it's just a best in class situation to make sure that everything like runs smooth. And it's also important to have a good redirect strategy in place, because if you don't, and somebody puts in a broken link, they could go to a 404 page, which basically is like you go to put in the URL, and like you could do this all the time. You could just like enter the URL wrong. The page just doesn't exist. So this is bad because if I was trying to go to a website and all of a sudden the page just like wasn't there, especially if it wasn't like I typed in, if I like clicked on something on Google and it brought me to a 404, rather than be like, oh, like let me go to their search bar and figure out like where on the site this might be, chances are I'm just going to click back and go to the next link. I really like the Lego and the Disney one because they're cute, but you can also make custom 404 pages to avoid losing unhappy people. So like one of the clients I help out with sometimes is Victoria's Secret. So let's say that like you like wanted to go to their new like Dream Angels bra, but like that's no longer for sale. Rather than just like bringing you to a 404 and being like, sorry, we don't have that, they'll just like redirect you to like the collections page. And even though you're like, oh, well, like I wanted that one, but these all look basically identical. So then like you'll just move on in your journey rather than being like, oh, like that sucks. Like I wanted that and it's not here. And then you like go back and go to like Third Love or like one of their competitors. And then one of the final things we're just going to touch on is this idea of like a page speed score. So this is something, there's a page speed insights tool that basically measures how fast like your site is. It talks through what loads first, if it's like relevant content, if it's images, how like slow it is for both desktop and mobile. And you get 3 different scores, like 3 different like buckets of scoring. It's on a 0 to 100 scale, with 100 being the best. And basically it's just important to have a website that goes fast, because if it takes more than like 3 seconds to load, we're just gonna quit. And like even as I say that, I'm like, oh, like 3 seconds doesn't sound that long. But if I'm like sitting here and I click on it and it just like doesn't load immediately, I'm like, oh, like that must be broken, and just like immediately leave. So it has people bounce a lot higher because we're like flighty as humans. So as an activity around page speed score, what we're gonna do is, this is the link, but if you just Google page speed insights, I like guarantee it's the first one. But I was wondering if everybody can take a stab at trying to find out which Boston-based college has the worst page speed. So it'll look like, I'm going to exit out of this for a sec. Hopefully I'm still sharing. It's going to look like this. And then you just like enter. They're all like northeastern.edu, bu.edu, those kinds of things. But if anybody wants to shout out once they get there, I'll give you guys a couple minutes to get here. Also, Gmail, the Northeastern, I just pulled all these colleges up, but you like copy or type it in and just paste it and analyze. I'm pretty sure I know which one is the worst, but feel free to tell me if you see something other. It sometimes takes extra minute. So just pulling up the Northeastern example that I have up, because I'm only looking at my own screen. You have mobile and then desktop, and you can toggle through. So like Northeastern has like a 39. It's like great. But for desktop, they're much better. And there's like a lot of info down here that like basically tells you why they're not doing great. And that's something I would just download and give to a developer. But does anybody want to share what college they looked up and what it is?
I have a question, actually, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So I did Northeastern, I got 44. So like, I'm just curious, it's like, how do they measure, like, how come there's a difference? And is it by like geographical? Is it by like device, or is it just like random? Like,
yeah, it's a little bit of both. So like, it's actually really interesting because sometimes page speed like goes through certain countries, so like siphon it through. So when I was working on Baskin, the way that like Baskin's website was set up was like block certain countries if they like didn't have like content there, or they like have Baskin Robbins, but like the way that Google was like pushing it through was it was blocking all the Google tools because it like saw it coming out of like, I don't know, it was coming out of like Dubai or something. They're like, well, we don't have a Baskin here, so like we're just like, this must be weird.
I see.
So like I am currently in Cambridge and I am on a PC. If you are not in Cambridge and not on a PC, it would be weird if like you had like a 90 and I had a 39. But since we're like kind of in the same range.
Okay.
Ryan, I saw you raise your hand.
When I searched Simmons, it showed up really low. It showed up at 7, and then I reloaded it because I was going to share the URL, and then it showed up as 20. And I'm really confused why that would happen if I was in the same location.
Yeah, so sometimes that's like, now that your computer, now that you have run it, it's like easier because like they like have all your cookies on file.
That makes sense.
So it's really finicky is basically the moral of the story. But like I did MIT earlier. So my best friend is a PhD student there, and they were like stupid high, which like felt right. But well, my MIT loads, did anybody try a college not MIT? Or yeah, they're like, look at this is 99.
That's crazy. Oh my god.
Wow.
I did Emerson and it was 18.
Does anybody have worse than Emerson?
I did Suffolk and that came out to 7.
Oh. I feel like 7's gonna be hard to beat. I'm down for someone to be worse than Suffolk though. Okay. Okay, so we're just gonna claim Suffolk is the worst website in Boston. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, when I saw this MIT one though, I screenshot this and sent it to like none of the clients I work on. I like screenshot it and I was like, this is fake. And I was like, I need you to run this. And he was like, oh, this is what I get too. I'm like, cool. Okay, so now we're done with the tech portion of this. We're gonna jump into the content side. This is my favorite part. So I'm gonna try not to just spend the entire like rest of the hour talking about this. It's basically a summary of what we're going to go on to. Basically, for content, there's like 3 things you got to do. First, you got to figure out what you want your keywords to be. Second, once you have those keywords, you want to optimize all your current content for those keywords. And then third, if you like notice you don't have certain things for those keywords, then you make content for those keywords. We could do an entire presentation on how you pick keywords, but we're not going to. So basically, to do that, something we do, there are these things called search audience insight reports. They're so cool. Basically, you sit down and you brainstorm like a ton. You either brainstorm a bunch of words that like would be relevant to your site, or you go and figure out like you can like use some Google tools to have like every single keyword you rank in the top 100 for. So like the first step is to get rid of all like the sketchy words that you didn't realize that you were ranking for. But once you do that, you see the search volume, you see like where you're ranking, you like can categorize them a bunch, and you can pull your competitors info as to where they rank and kind of seeing where those opportunities are. So like if you have a bunch of things, like let's say that we were looking to do like educational content, and we saw that, okay, a lot of people are interested in educational content about espressos, and they're like specifically interested in versus content. That could be something where we'd be like, okay, like we should focus on like a macchiato versus a cappuccino rather than a like dietary guide for a latte. So it's like kind of where you're able to see where those like white space opportunities are based on the keywords that you are ranking for, as well as the ones that are like achievable. For instance, like I work on Dow, and then when I just got rolled onto H&M. H&M is not going to rank for clothing. That is a very vague like word. So even though I'm sure clothing has like over a couple million searches, something like that just like doesn't make sense. But something like, we probably wouldn't go for cheap, but like affordable women's clothing could be something that like they would want to rank for, because they see it as something that like, oh, like we're already at like 80. It would be really cool if we were like 20 and like ways to move up, and then you could like branch off of that. So once you get your keywords, then it's good just to like take stock of where you are. If you're like looking around, something that was really interesting we did on Cafe Bustelo was that we realized that they do like espresso style coffee, but all of their pages were optimized for coffee. Coffee is a very vague term. There's like, you know, you got the Starbucks and the Dunkins, but then you also have like the Folgers and the Cafe Bustelos. So we recommended that they went through and like update most of their like metadata, which we'll get into later, and their content to specifically call out how it's espresso coffee, because that was something that was a low competitor term. They were already in like the 20s or 30s for, and they could go and really like close that space to like be on the top ranking sites for it. And that's something then like if they like find like a niche to like own, then they can really just like build up that ecosystem of content. And then looking through being like, okay, well, we see that there's a lot of people who are interested in whipped coffee, but we don't have anything on whipped coffee, but we have a lot of recipes. Why don't we consider making something around whipped coffee, especially as everyone's coming up on their quarantine anniversary, looking at top trends and hobbies they picked up over the year. So it's a way to also figure out where there are opportunities and where you can like really make a difference in terms of site, like what's more of like those quick wins that can push you over the edge. It is important when you make the content for it to be readable. If you'll notice, some sites have like a bunch of images, which are great, but sometimes they like put all their words in their images. It's like when you see an infographic and it's like totally like there's like nothing at the bottom that like tells you what the words are. Google like loves to see images, and we'll like talk about ways to like optimize images in a bit, but like you don't want to put like 2,000 words in a picture, because then Google like can't read it. So it's important that Google like, or search engines can crawl your info, because search engines are essentially content machines, and then the content itself like answers those questions that they're asking. And kind of going back to the intent that we talked about on the upfront, that keyword research is basically what you use to understand your market and know like what does the searcher actually want. Is someone that is looking for, in this example, like a movie theater, there's 1.2 million people that search for a movie theater. So it's like, okay, if I have a movie theater, like that's probably a bit aggressive for me to compete on. But maybe I want to drive people into the movie theater. So maybe I want to optimize a bit more for movie theater near me, which still has a ton of people searching for it, but 800,000 is a lot more approachable than 1.2 million. And then maybe I own specifically a Regal Cinema near me, which has 22,000 monthly searches. So something like that is where you start to figure out like what types of people that you're aiming for. Are you looking for someone who's just like curious what a movie theater is? Or are you looking for someone who's like looking for a movie theater but doesn't know which one they want? Or are they just looking for like your movie theater? So it's kind of figuring out like how competitive those searches are, and then what you can do to provide the different types of content on your site to get them where you want them to enter. So then also talking about URL structure. Even though since we're like really not typing in URL specifically anymore, it's still the first thing that Google sees. And you wanna, when able, put keywords in, and it like builds this whole breadcrumb foundation. So like using a clothing store example, if you were like clothingstore.com, you could be like /women's /pants / shorts / biker shorts or something. So it's like a really easy way. So then like everything on your biker shorts page is like specifically biker shorts. And it's a good way also, like when in doubt, you should be able to look at a URL and kind of have an idea of what's going to be on the page. And it really helps if you like have an idea of what keywords you want to target before you make the URL, because maybe like, you know, we're calling it like bike shorts, but maybe like in a couple years it's like mid-thigh shorts or like exercise shorts. So figuring out like what you want to call them, and what, more importantly, people are calling them. One of the clients I was working on had something with it's like, you know, this like ready to go coffees, it's like in a can. They were calling them iced espresso, which like is, it's like not what it is. It's in a can. It's not ice. It's like, it's just like iced espresso is someone looking for like a little shot of espresso over ice. So we were like, hey, you got a great page and everything, but you really got to change the name. Like, this is just like not what people call it. And even if like technically more people were searching for iced espresso than they were ready to drink coffee, it's like, okay, but like nobody who's searching for iced espresso is looking for what you're calling iced espresso. So it's like lining up with that intent. And then one of my favorite things, which sounds so nerdy, but it's this thing called metadata. And here's NUMA as an example. But meta is basically just data that describes the data. So when you're on Google and you see like the title and then the little description that like helps you figure out whether or not you want to click on it, that's metadata, and you get to decide that. I always thought prior to starting my job that was something that like Google decides what it's about, but no, I decide what that's about. So the title is something that's just like clickable. Ideally, it describes what you're going to click on. So in this first example, which is NUMA's website, it says NUMA, Northeastern University Marketing Association, which is great because that's exactly what you want, because that is what the page is. And that can usually be like 40 to 60 characters before they start cutting you off. And then the meta description is right underneath that, which is the brief description of the web page, just summarizing what's there. And again, NUMA does a great job because it has what NUMA is, and also highlights the weekly meetings, the co-op employers. So if I was searching for, you know, like marketing association or like even like Northeastern marketing co-ops, like these kinds of keywords are in NUMA's meta description. And then we have headers, which are when you get to the actual like on-site page. And those are just basically ways to like categorize your data. So you have like basically headings is like you have the big one, which is usually like your H1, and then a bunch of subheadings, like 1 through 6, that just kind of help organize and let Google as well as other search engines understand like what's on your site. And it's a top-down hierarchy with like H1 being the most important thing. So on NUMA's website, it's about NUMA, which again makes sense because our main keyword is NUMA. And then what's cool is that in addition to having metadata directly here, and this is again something that you can completely control, you can also control for images. So you have these things called alt tags that are used to describe images to visually impaired via individuals via screen readers. But it's really important that sometimes people will describe things based on like what they inherently know it is and not what it actually is. So for instance, this is like the grumpy cat, and like I know what the grumpy cat looks like because I've seen 400 of these pictures before. But for someone who's never seen the grumpy cat before, rather than saying like keyword stuffing and saying like grumpy cat is grumpy cat gif, what you should say is black and white cat with blue eyes looking very grumpy. So it's like really like breaking down what it is. And this is how also Google Images works. So if like when you Google like blue sky, like the reason that like pictures of a blue sky come up are because like the images in their alt tags say like blue sky, or like sky is blue at night, or blue sky over the ocean, or like all these different things that really describe the image. So for our activity break, we're actually getting, it's like upwards of like 3 people to volunteer to write me an alt tag for the memes I'm about to show. I'll start with one, and then like one sole person, and then like, you know, depending on like how afraid everyone else is after that, we can go see if anyone wants to do the others. It's gonna be real awkward if I do it, so.
I'll start off.
You can do one. Oh.
Or Alyssa. Well, you got 2 there, so.
Cool. Whoever wants to go first, you can pick your meme and write me an alt tag for it. Obviously, just say it, don't write it. But
You get first choice if you want, Alyssa.
Okay. I'll do the top right. So I guess senior woman falling off of bed, grabbing furniture with a blurry effect.
yeah, that would be perfect. You want to throw in like dramatically too, like that would be perfect. Because that's something that, like, you know, if we were like here and there are like people in the room, and like if my mom came in and was like, without looking at it, I'm like, oh, it's a senior woman falling off a bed holding furniture with a blurry effect, she'd be like, cool, she could like kind of draw it, you know?
Yeah. Okay. Nice.
Ryan, do you want to take a stab at one?
Sure, I'll do the cat. A white cat is sitting in a black dinner chair in front of a table with food, looking kind of angry or upset. I don't really know how I would describe that, but.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Does anybody want to take a stab at one of the other 3? Also cool, if not, but.
I can go.
Okay.
I can do the one in the top left. I would say like 2 panes, monkey puppet in green shirt looking suspicious.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all I got.
No, that's perfect. I would like say for the middle one, the top middle, I'd probably be like girlfriend looking annoyed as boyfriend checks out woman in red dress or something like that. And then bottom left might be like white man blinks surprised or like sarcastically. Okay, so now we're going to get into this last section, which is local and social foundations. And the game comes in the middle as a fun surprise. So there's this thing called Google My Business, which is a free tool. And Google says it's like an easy to use tool that basically is what gives the information that you see on Google search and Google Maps. It's pretty easy to set up. You basically, if you have like an actual physical location, like if you're like selling clothes online, like Google My Business is like not for you. It's only for like a physical store that someone could like theoretically go to. So this is a paint store near my house. But in order to set up a Google My Business profile, you need 3 things. Ideally, you have a lot more things, but you like need 3 things. And that's a name, an address, and a phone number. If you don't have these 3 things, for starters, like if you don't have an address, then like, what are you doing setting up a Google profile? And you don't have a name, that's just like real weird. But some people like try not to put a phone number in, and Google just looks at them and they're like, that's sketchy. Like if like you don't have a phone number, you want people like show up to your like murder house, like no. So this is your basic information. And then some additional information that's real helpful is if you have a category. So this is a paint store. Google has an absurd amount of categories. So like for like a coffee shop, you could be a coffee shop, you could be an espresso bar, you could be a donut shop, like you can be like a sandwich shop, but not to be confused with like a deli. So it like really helps you figure out what you want. And it's also interesting for the way that the category influences searchers. So like there's a big difference if I'm looking for like donuts near me or coffee near me, like in you know, like it really depends like what you want to be known for, or like a difference between a deli and like a sandwich shop. Like are you looking for something like Archie's downtown that's like, you know, a little like quick and dirty, get in and get out? Or are you looking for something that's like you're gonna sit down, you have a nice meal, like you might like cater work from? It really helps figure out like what you are. something new that they added during COVID that I love are the service options. So for the paint store here, we have that they have in-store shopping and curbside pickup, but you might start seeing like they have like dine-in, outdoor seating, takeout, delivery, things like that. I mostly look at it for food chains. So I'm sure there's a bunch of others, but something like that is a really quick way to look around if you're like delivery near me. If you like have delivery but haven't like checked the flag, Google's probably like, oh, like, do they have delivery? Like, I know their website says so, but like, you know, they didn't like check that button. And then hours, when in doubt, it's helpful for people to know when you're open so they don't show up and it's closed. And it's also important that they're accurate. Otherwise, customers leave negative reviews. And then speaking of reviews, some of the finishing touches that you can add to these are photos. I can go to like, there's like this furniture shop across the street, and like, I can just like go out and take a picture of the photo right now in like the dead of night and upload it and be like, I was at this place. And if you don't submit photos of your place, my photo is going to be your cover photo. And I can assure you that my cover photo taken at like 8 p.m. at night in the middle of winter is not going to be as cute as whatever photo you want on yours. And there's also like, if you're like a restaurant, you can submit pictures of your food. And it's, you know, people just take janky photos of like their kids and like put it in there. So like, it's a way to kind of like showcase what you're looking for. The second are the calls to action. So in this case, we have like website, directions, save, and call. Directions and save will always be there. But like if you don't have a phone number, which you should have, in order to like have this, sometimes people like remove it, their phone number is broken. There won't be the call button. And if you don't put it in the website, then they can't like click to your website and like, maybe you really want to go to the Sherwin-Williams paint store, but you want to read go to their website first. They don't have a website button. If I had searched paint store near me and like right underneath them was like Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever else you get paint, like, do I want to like then type in Sherwin-Williams paint store? Or do I just want to like click down and click website on the one right below? And then the third is reviews. You can write a review for your own place. You can call your friends and family, get them to write reviews of your place. It's nice to just also reach out to people that like your thing, to write nice things about your thing, because I can assure you that if someone doesn't like your thing, they will write a review about your thing. So reviews also like matter more or less for different places. Like if I'm just trying to go, there's like a bike shop next, I live around a lot of weird things, but if there's like a bike shop next door, and if it's like, oh, like this is like the worst place ever to buy a bike, like bikes cost an absurd amount of money. So like maybe I would like walk an extra 50 feet to like go to a different bike store. But like, and there's a McDonald's next to me and they're like, this McDonald's is dirty. I was like, cool, I planned on spending 2 minutes in there. So not a concern. So it also depends on like what you're really looking for. So the activity we're gonna do, it's gonna be a race. So we're gonna see, I picked up actually no, I texted my friend and I was like, weird for someone to find, and she said saltwater fish. So I was like, what are you doing right now? She's like, I'm watching Finding Nemo. Whoever can find me the closest saltwater fish to wherever they are, let me know. Let me know like how many minutes it would take you to get there. Walking or driving. I walk everywhere, but like if you drive too, that's also fine. And then when you find your saltwater fish, I don't care if you're buying it, I don't care if you're eating it, like whatever you're doing with your saltwater fish, tell me how you found your saltwater fish. Like, what did you use to search?
Do you mean get as in buy?
Yeah, or eat, or
like,
whatever.
Eat or buy. Okay.
Live your dream.
All right, so the closest place to me is Petco, and it's 2.4 miles or 5 minutes away.
That's a solid.
Yeah, it's close. I could walk there. And I looked up saltwater fish near me.
Nice. Did anybody find a saltwater fish near them and do something different to find their saltwater fish?
I found a pet store like 1.4 miles or like 5-minute drive away from me, but I also searched saltwater fish near me.
Okay.
I just searched where can I get a saltwater fish, and I found like PetSmart and Petco, which are like 15 minutes or 20 minutes away from me.
Solid. Yeah, all these are good things to do. One thing I did, because I was trying to see if I could find a saltwater fish near me, I Googled like what a saltwater fish was. And apparently like cod is a saltwater fish. And then I searched cod near me, and there's a British pub down the street from me. So you're all getting pets and I'm eating yours.
I'd searched seafood restaurant.
Oh, how
Um,
far away is the next seafood restaurant from you?
20 minutes, Atlantic Fish. I'm in Boston, so I think that's the one in Boylston.
Very cool. Yeah, so there's like a lot of ways to get to whatever you're looking for, which is pretty cool, whether or not you're starting like within maps or if you're starting just in traditional Google search. And moving on to just like 2 quick sites on social. It's nice to be nice to the socials. For starters, sometimes it's like really cool when like if you are publishing a really interesting blog, maybe it's like about the history of saltwater fish, and you're like looking to, you know, promote that content, and you're really proud of it. Like, yeah, maybe when people search the history of saltwater fish, it'd be a really weird thing to look up in your weird time, but you know, you do you. It would be something that like people could organically find. But you could also be like, hey, social team, I wrote this like really cool article and you should share it. And assuming they also thought it was a really cool article, just touch and go sometimes with the social teams. They could share it on like whatever is relevant. Like if that was like a long form article, maybe like Facebook or Twitter, versus like, look at all these pictures I took of my saltwater fish, might be more like Pinterest appropriate. But if you send it out via social, then people engage with your site that way, even though the like clicks wouldn't always be attributed to SEO or to organic search. You could then like Google be like, oh, like a lot of people are like into this page, so then when people are organically searching for it, Google would be more likely to raise up your thing because they've already decided like that people had found value of it. And then you can also work with the teams just like integrate a bit more. So like if I'm like on a website, I can include like little like social banner at the bottom, or I can like, if I have a really cool article at the end, I could like put one of those little pins on and be like, follow us on Twitter. And then alternatively on Twitter, they could have a link to the website that lists like a give and take. And it also just helps people like engage with you once they're like done with the initial thing. So in summary, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. No, search engine optimization is just the process of tailoring your website and content to get more organic traffic from search engines, which ideally brings you more traffic to your site, which ideally, if like your goal is to like get more store visits or to like get more sales, like whatever your goal is, to help you get more of it. Does anybody have any questions related to SEO, me, Digitas, NUMA, other things? This wonderful room I live in.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, did you like learn that on the job, or did you like take a specific class? Okay.
Yeah, I didn't learn anything. No, I feel like that's like one of the things, and like I'm sure it's different depending on like what, like we have like creative teams, and I'm sure like the creative teams like learned to Photoshop before they just like rolled up day one. But like I knew like Google Analytics because I had worked like some of my co-ops. I did Rapid7, VMware, and Havas for my co-ops at Northeastern. So I like knew like Google Analytics. Like I didn't know Google Search Console, and that's like my number one thing. Pretty much everything about SEO is teachable, which I really like. We just hired one of our old interns, and he was like a little panicked that like, you know, like on this like 3rd day, he didn't remember everything from like 2 summers ago. And I was like, you're fine. Like anything you don't know, like if I can't teach you, like then that's on me. It's not on you for not knowing it.
Thank you.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
I had a question too. So what was it that kind of made you start looking in this direction? Like, did you realize this when you were at Northeastern, or was this something you kind of realized after you graduated?
Yeah, so my first co-op was at Rapid 7, and I loved it. But I was a digital marketing and specialist intern. I don't know, I did digital stuff. So I did like a little bit of a lot of like the inbound marketing kind of thing, and we touched on SEO. And it was always like I liked it more than like I also like made the like webinar pages, and it was not for me. But I didn't really do a ton of it until Digitas, but my last co-op was at Havas, and I was really interested in agencies after I worked there, and I loved working at Havas too. Highly recommend that. Obviously, Digitas Havas, but it was like I definitely like that agency feel. Like my primary client is Dunkin' and has been the 2 years I've been here, but I was on Smucker's, the parent company of like Smucker's and like a bunch of other random like coffee and pet brands for like 6 months, and then I was on Dow. I might be going on to H&M soon, and I was like on Victoria's Secret for like the like 3 months during like swim season. So it's like I really like how I can jump around a lot of different clients, even though like all I talk about all the time is coffee. I like theoretically know like polyurethanes and like whatever other chemicals Dow sells.
Thank you.
I know this isn't really related, but you touched on cookies earlier, and I was just wondering if you could explain like what those are exactly, because
Oh,
I always
yeah.
accept them, but I never know what they are.
Yeah, so basically, when you go to a website, there's this thing that like some teams use, like very specifically, it's like Google Tag Manager, like organizes them. I don't touch that. That's media tech. They're a little technical for me. But basically, when you go to a website and you click like accept the cookies, they like put a little like thing on you. So then when you like go around their website, they know what you're doing. And then when you leave their website, they follow you. So like, if you ever notice, like I know like, you know, we all joke that like Instagram's listening to you all the time, which like it probably is. But part of the reason that it's like so good about that is like I, for instance, was talking about Bombas socks the other day because all my socks are crap and my boots are also crap. And so if I don't wear thick enough socks, then my like snow boots like give me blisters. Rather than just buying more boots like an adult, I'm just gonna buy more socks. So I was like talking about socks, and then I was like looking up some socks, and all of a sudden I'm getting sock ads everywhere I go. And part of that is because I went to like Bombas, but in addition to like the Bombas ads, all of a sudden like I'm getting like a lot of sock ads everywhere. And I'm probably not gonna buy socks until it's too hot anyways. But it's the idea that like it's kind of like an agreement you make, like in order to use your website, I agree to like give you some information. And that's also why something that we use for one of the clients is store visits, which like is really creepy if you just like think about it a bit more, because if I go to, let's just use McDonald's, which is not the client in question, but if I like go to McDonald's and I like look up the calorie count for an egg McMuffin, and then I close out, and then I immediately go, and let's say I did that on my laptop, okay? But I'm signed in on my laptop, right? And then I take my phone and I watch McDonald's, and it probably takes me like 5 minutes to get my egg McMuffin. Google's like, oh, this girl went to McDonald's, and then she went to McDonald's. And I know she went to McDonald's because her phone was at a McDonald's for 5 minutes, and I know where her phone was. I know she owns her phone, and I know where that location is. And then they like count it towards McDonald's as like a store visit, even though it's not like you were like chilling in the McDonald's, like getting my egg McMuffin, like, you know, doing that. Like they just like know where you are at all times, which is like really creepy, but also like I also would prefer to get Instagram ads related to me rather than like, because I know DuckDuckGo has been getting bigger as a search engine, in part because it's like very not having your information on file. But like the downside of that is like I go to certain websites all the time. So when all of a sudden I like go to DuckDuckGo and I look up the same thing and like the website that I want doesn't show up, like I get annoyed. And on one hand, it's because DuckDuckGo is not saving every piece of information that I own, so it doesn't know that I want this. But on the other hand, it makes my life like half a second harder, and that frustrates me.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I just have one quick question regarding your clients. Like, do you reach out to them or do they like to ask for help?
Yeah, so a little bit of both. It's actually really cool because Digitas started doing this thing where they like reach out to a bunch of different clients at the same time. It's like they do like industry analyses, which are just so interesting to be a part of. So it's like across like, I don't know, across like shoe companies. You might like reach out to like a couple and like do a big analysis on a bunch of them. For a lot of them, you get RFP'd, which is request for proposal, where a client will they'll normally work with like a group whose job it is to like figure out which agencies to potentially work with based off their size, based off their budget. And then you're part of the pitch process, which can take anywhere from like a month to 15 months. And like sometimes it's what I really like about especially SEO too, is that I feel like we have a good variation of like 6-week long like projects that we're working with like a vet company up in Maine who like just needed someone to do like a whole redirect project because they're like merging a bunch of sites. And then like for Dunkin', we're their account of record. So we do like everything media for them. So like sometimes we're like the only people going for it because it's like smaller and they just like want a quick exchange. It might be like one of our people left to go work on a client and then they like we're like, hey, we got some money if you want to find an agency. And it's like, well, I just worked at this one agency for like 25 years. Like maybe we should hire them and I can hang out with my friends again. But now I'm their boss. So like it is a little bit mix of both. I'd say it's probably more of like for like the big ones, it's like a lengthy process where like they like pay people to figure out like Digitas is big and like we do good work. So like we tend to have like those like bigger clients. Like we have the CVS's, the Victoria's Secrets, the Polaris, which are like those off-road vehicles, and the Dunkins and things like that.
Thank you.
Of course. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if anyone does have any other questions right now, but you think of one later, I'm sure Ryan can share out my info. Feel free to hit me up with any questions.
Awesome. And if you have any more specific questions towards Katherine, is it cool if you stay on for like 5 minutes as everyone kind of goes on? Awesome. Okay. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. If you're interested in Katherine's info, I'm willing to send that along. So just reach out to me or contact NUMA. Either email works. And have a great night. Bye, guys.
Become official members.
Yeah.
Thank you.
She said.
Thank you.
I'll stop sharing my screen too.
Slides were so pretty.
What?
The slides looked really nice.
Thanks. I used the official Digitas template.
Nice.
Nice.
I had initially, we like did this whole thing for Dunkin' International that was like a really like, it was, oh my gosh, I should have just started fresh. But instead I was like, I'm going to take this 120-page document that I made as like a PDF book and I'm going to turn it into a fun slideshow. And then like, I got to like 60 slides and sent it to our new analyst. And I was like, can you tell me what I need to cut? And he was like so much of this. He was like, they don't care what a canonical is. He goes, I don't know what a canonical is. I was like, okay. Yeah, but then I like flew it by my boss real quick and I was like, I can share this, right? But of course I waited until like Monday to do that. And he was like, this is Dunkin' branded. He's like, can you put it in the Digitas template? And like a little part of me died, but then like, you know, we did it.
Perfect.
I actually have another question, Katherine.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, like, so like sometimes whenever you like search like a website, like not only do you get like their title, but you also get like a whole bunch of like subheaders too. Like, do they pay for that?
So those are called site links. If you're in paid search, then they like specifically like pay to put them in. But sometimes with Google, if like you search for like Dunkin', they have like the menu come up and then the blog, we don't control that, which is inherently frustrating because sometimes like all of a sudden, because the blog for Dunkin' is on this whole subdomain, it's like news.dunkindonuts.com. So sometimes the blog will be like pulled in as a site link and all of a sudden we're like, do we have like 7 million more impressions than normal? And they're like, oh, just kidding. It's because anytime anybody searched anything Dunkin' related, you were like right there.
Oh, okay. So sometimes you pay for it, but like sometimes Google
Yeah,
just.
in paid search, it's like also really interesting in paid search because sometimes like you get things like some clients are like really into their like sustainability efforts, and it's like, cool, well, like, do you want to put in like this is like our CSR, or do you want to be like $2 coffees after 2 p.m. on Monday? You know,
Okay.
it's like political. Of
Right. Thank you.
course.
Hi, I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more just on your experience at Digitas and kind of your journey there. I had
Yeah,
a
I love
speaker in my
Digitas.
I had a speaker in my marketing class a couple of years ago, and she was from Digitas, and from there I just like totally fell in love with the company. So if I could get like any information on
Yeah,
that, that'd be awesome.
I fangirl. Yeah, I'm a big fan. Even when we went digital, which like kind of sucked at first. I mean, like this is where I work out and I sleep and like, you know, I live here. I live in this room. It's fine. But yeah, so I applied. So I was at Havas in 2018 for basically all of 2018. And I loved Havas. I was there for 7 months as an insight and data strategist, like co-op or whatever. And I took a month off, and then I like, because I was taking like 2 classes. Like one was English, so it was like online or whatever. And you could like do the class in 2 weeks or whatever. So I worked 3 days a week as a media planner, which was not for me at all, but I appreciate it's for other people. So while I was at Havas, they were just like dragging their feet on hiring. So I was like, hey, I'm gonna have to start looking for other jobs. And then I like harassed my boss like every 2 weeks in case he like forgot, which of course he like never did. So I applied to a lot of places, and I'm not sure where you are in graduating, but in your last semester, it's infuriating because all your friends in like accounting are gonna get their job like their sophomore year. Like one of my roommates works at PwC, and like she got her first job for like first co-op in her sophomore year, and she's just like worked at PwC the last like 6 years or whatever, like whenever like her co-ops are. So like she was not worried, and I'm just like, I'm gonna like never have a job, and I'm gonna have to move back home to my parents' house, and like I don't know if I get along with my parents that well. But everything like really happened in like 2 weeks at the end of November, which is like infuriating because I just wanted to happen like months earlier. But it's fine. I only cried on my couch a couple times. I'm glad we're recording this. But there is like this element of like, so I was applying and I applied for, I was just applying anywhere for any agency. I was not married to SEO. I was like just married to like an agency, and an agency that paid well. For full context, I make $48,000 a year. I would like to make more, but Hill Holiday was offering $40,000 a year, and Havas offered $42.50 at first, just in case you need some numbers. But which honestly, like that wasn't the big swipe. I mean, like I was working for $40,000, but that was like part of it. It was like I was looking around and I applied for Digitas, and I got an interview there, and I report directly to the VP because SEO is like a little smaller. Like now in the Boston office we have like 8 people, but it, like initially, I mean, I guess it was still 8 people. We just like ebbed and flowed with COVID. But I love my boss in like a purely like healthy way, but like I fangirl over him. He's incredible. And so like as soon as I met with my boss, and like the other 2 guys were really cool too, even though one like terrified me, and then like we became like really good friends, and I was like, that hates me. But as soon as I like met with my boss and he was just talking about like all the opportunities at Digitas, I was like, cool, like I'm gonna work here. They want me to work here. So I ended up getting Havas like approximately like 20 seconds before I accepted the Digitas offers, and then I had like a little more conundrum because I like had been wanting to work at Havas forever. But I mean, part of it was just SEO started like a lot cooler, and there was that element of like copywriting and like more like flexibility. I really didn't like media planning, so I didn't stay at Havas and then went to Digitas, and I've been there for 2 years, 2 months. I like technically started a week before I graduated, but they like just didn't care. Also, like I was only taking Bob's strategy class, and I was like, hey, what if I just like didn't show up? And he was like, I don't care. He's like, you got a job, you did the thing, get out. So I've been working there for like 2 years. I love it. It's like pretty cool. Media has I think like 80 people. So SEO is like one of the like, I mean, we have SEO, we have like project management, creative, XD, strategy, media. But then under media, we have precision, which is programmatic and core media, SEO, paid search, social, and another group. Core media, I don't know there. There's another group. I don't remember as soon as we hang up. But I really like people. It's very young, which I like. Like my boss is like not even 40, and he's the vice president and global and like national group director. Every like my like in between boss is like she like just turned 31. Every like, you know, like I worked at VMware and I like loved VMware, but everybody was like married with 2 kids. And I'm like, cool, like I'm a fetus. So it was kind of nice to have like, you know, I have like friends, and like granted, like one's in Texas and one's in Florida now because they're just like casually wherever they want. It's like nice to like have a group of people that like, I mean, one of my friends, like approximately like 5 minutes before, she's just like, my roommate's being so stupid. Can I FaceTime you? I'm like, no, leave me alone. But like, I like that element. I also like at like Digitas, you can kind of just like I was on the softball team and I was like real bad at it. And like, I run a bachelor league and I write like recaps that like mostly I just did to amuse myself. And then like one of the project management kids was like, hey, like my roommates and I are like really into it. And he's just like, can you like, do you mind if I like add these 3 dudes to this chain? And I was like, sure, like whatever. And we do dumb things like there's this like national park that does like Fat Bear Week where they like basically like judge how chubby bears get over the course of like pre-hibernation. So that you can just like do a bunch of dumb shit with your friends, which is fun. And then like the work's really interesting. You know, obviously the core of why I go to Digitas, but it's like I like love the clients I work on. I like getting a lot of different opportunities. We are like part of Publicis, which is very global. So like it's cool. Do you have any specific questions? I just rambled. Like
No worries. That was great. Do you have your person winning for Bachelor?
No, so like my issue is that like technically we didn't do, so the first time we did it, we did like set brackets, and now we do like every single week because like people weren't like emotionally attached enough and they didn't have to do it every week. And like I've been spoiled this season, but like I don't like who it is, so I'm just like deciding to do like my ideal state for Matt James.
I see.
You caught my attention because you said Bachelor. I also do weekly brackets with my friends, or we pick every week who gets a rose.
Yeah,
Great.
which like I think is the way to do it. We used to do this one system who like is for like the Claritatia season, where like in addition to like who you thought got the rose, right, you had to like answer certain questions, and I loved that because it was just like when like Ed complained to Chris Harrison about how he didn't knock. Yes, you should. Like the like bonus question is, do you think Chris Harrison's gonna knock before he enters? And that was like, you know, better because then like I could like, you know, like I don't know what color dress Tasha's gonna wear first scene or whatever. But now I'm like, oh well, like based on the fact that I actually watched the show versus half the people in this Bachelor bracket, like I know who's probably gonna survive the 2-on-1 because I watched the preview for next week, you know.
It's a great show.
It's so easy though. It's like one of those things that I just did like as soon as I graduated Northeastern. Like one of my best friends was like a bunch of my friends moved away, but like my best friend and I were still here and we were doing like everything together, which is like still what we do now. But all of a sudden we were like sitting or whatever, and she was going on vacation for a week, and I was like, what am I gonna do? And I was like, Kelsey, do we need to make more friends? And she was like, she kind of like gave a look like, I don't want to do that. But then one of these girls and that I was like in a class with, and we were in like 17 group projects over the course of Northeastern, like got brunch, and she like brought up The Bachelor, and she was like, oh, are you watching? And like, and I was like, yeah, like I'm a big fan, just because I wanted to like, you know, make a friend. And then she invited me to the weekly Bachelor like hangouts or whatever. And like now I write like these absurdly lengthy like recaps filled with like memes I get from the internet. So it's a slippery slope. I saw Rachel, you said you watch. I'm gonna be like 3 years from now when you're like running your office's pool, just remember that like I was the example of how you can get in deep. I'm on the subreddit. It's on Hulu.